All right, looks like one more popping in here. Okay. Very good. All right. Well, if you're ready, Jackie, I can get started.
Sounds good.
Okay. So my name is Jim Schmidt. I'm the Vice President of Library Sales at Transparent Language. Joining me is Lauren Gansars, who is our product manager for Transparent Language Online. We're going to kind of tag team this a little bit. I have a short presentation, basically just talking about the highlights of like who we are and what the platform has to offer, some new things that have just recently rolled out. And Lauren will take you on a demo, and then I'll kind of wrap it up at the end with just circling back to some of the things that make us different, Transparent Language different. All right, Lauren, let's get started. So who is Transparent Language? We are a developer of language learning systems and services, primarily for the U.S. government. We started 25 years ago with the U.S. government. We work with the Department of Defense, a number of security agencies, all 4 branches of the military. You know, any branch that has somebody going overseas, we will be providing the language learning service for them. About 14 years ago, we entered the library market. We partnered with Recorded Books at the time, if you remember. And then about 2 years ago, Recorded Books sold their library business, and we decided to go direct. We had that relationship with libraries, and we've been successful ever since. The platform is an award-winning platform, but we've received just this past year our 7th consecutive Platinum Modern Library Award. If you're not familiar with that award, it's sort of like the People's Choice Award of digital services. So libraries, about 80,000 from all different, specialties, public, school, higher ed, all vote on the services that they buy and use and allow their patrons to use. And we've won the highest rating in that, which is the Platinum, which it's kind of rated on the functionality of the system, the value, perceived value, customer service, how well it works and how effective it is. So we're pretty proud of that. Who we work with, libraries, public libraries in the institutional library market is by far our largest sector. We work with large libraries, we work with small libraries, we work with local libraries, we work with international libraries. So we have thousands of libraries across the US, Canada, the UK. We provide our service to all libraries in Ireland, and all libraries in Denmark, and we have hundreds in Australia that work with us. And I mentioned the U.S. government; we're still a primary provider for them. K-12, higher ed, and recently corporations have been interested in offering this kind of thing. On the state level, we have 4 statewide services: North Carolina, Tennessee, Ohio. We just signed up with Massachusetts here in July. And we have 1 or 2 more coming later this year. So we're used to dealing with, really our customer service, our customer success teams. We're used to dealing with any kind of library scenario. They'll be with you from the very start of your program all the way, on. Anytime you need help, we're there for you. And then we have some large metros as well, as Las Vegas and Jacksonville, and a couple more people joining us here. That's good. All right. Welcome to those who joined us. I'm Jim Schmidt. I'm the VP of Sales at Transparent. I'm just sort of giving a quick overview before we get into the demo. So talking about the available languages now, we have 120 foreign languages for English speakers. We just recently added in our indigenous collection, Tanacross and Yupik, which are languages spoken up in Alaska. We have a pretty robust English ESL program. We have beginner content for speakers of 34 different languages. We have intermediate and advanced content all the way up to a pretty sophisticated immersion-based English program. As part of that, we also have American citizenship tests that are built into a lot of those languages. And we just recently added English for Pashto, Dari, and just this past week, English for Ukrainian. And we'll release new languages from time to time throughout the year, but these 3 languages were specifically asked for by librarians. Last year when the changes in Afghanistan happened and we got an influx of immigrants there, and really in anticipation of Ukrainian people moving, unfortunately, for what's going on over there right now, looks like it might be a longer term thing than people hope. But we'll build these kind of courses just as librarians request them. We don't ever charge you for that. We can't really tell you how many languages we add a year, but it runs at 2, 3, 5, something like that. But we don't charge you for those. We have 83 non-English paired languages. So that would be sort of like Spanish for German, and all of the different flavors of that. We have Kids Speak, which is it's a kind of an interactive and immersive language learning for kids K through 2. We have that in 6 different languages: Chinese, English, French, German, and Italian. And it's different. It's a different learning method. And you'll see this in the demo. Kids at that age really need something that's more, really immersive and colorful and engaging than the language learning that we do as adults. So you'll see the differences. And coming soon, Cherokee, we're going to add that to our Indigenous language collection, which would give us 25 languages there. And then American Sign Language, which we just put live at the beginning of this week, right after the 4th. So I'll have more details on that. You'll be able to see that live in the demo. We have 2 different components to the system. So the learning portal, so that's the patron-facing side. That's where they can access their courses, review the content they've learned, set learning goals, and measure their progress. There's a lot of different customization that kind of makes us unique, and we'll show you that in the demo. Some services, you kind of have to follow the path that's laid out for you. In ours, you may have a really sort of specific need for some language learning, like you want to learn how to order food in a restaurant or something. You can build your learning path around that kind of specificity. The admin portal side of it, that's where you can get in, you can run your usage reports, get your ROI assessment of how well things are doing, manage your patrons, and set up all different kinds of customizations to kind of make it look and feel like it's a product from your library. Our pedagogical approach, so we like to call it declarative first. And the reason for that, and welcome, it looks like we have just one more person join. We're just doing a quick overview of the service before we get into the demo. I'm talking about our learning approach here. We call it declarative because there are 2 different ways that your brain learns. There's a declarative part of your brain which learns vocabulary, short phrases, numbers, and things like that. And declarative requires you to refresh that content. It's a shorter term memory. So if you don't have a way to continuously refresh, you learn, but then you also lose as time goes on. On the procedural side, that's where you sort of, it's where grammar and grammar skills are learned in language. And the best way to describe procedural is like if you learn how to ride a bike, that is procedural learning in your brain. So once you learn how to ride it, and if you don't ride a bike for 10 years, you can generally get back on a bike and ride it. Your body and brain remembers it. So we focus on declarative first in the learning method because so much communication can happen just in basic vocabulary and short phrases. So, if you just want to use this to prep for a vacation you're going to take to Spain or something like that, you can get in and build a quick database of content that you can use that can help you and quickly help you. So you don't have to go through 2 years of instruction because you're only going to be there for a week. But if you do want to get there, we do have, as you progress through, we have grammar, but it's later in the program for us. The major learner benefits. So, we work on a browser. We also work on mobile devices, Apple, Android, and Amazon. The cool thing about that is it's cross-platform functional. So if I'm working online and I'm in the middle of a lesson and I have to go, I can pick that lesson up on my app right where I left off and continue my learning. We also, this is unique to us, we teach all 4 language learning skills. And that's listening, reading, speaking, and writing. And where we're different is in the writing part of it. We're the only platform that, Welcome. Somebody else has just arrived. Just doing a quick overview before we get into the demo. You haven't missed the demo. So we teach writing in our platform, and we think that's important because people tend to think about language learning in terms of learning how to speak a language and learning how to understand it when it's spoken back to you. But so much communication today is done textually in email and text that if you don't have that built into your platform, you really are deficient. So we have some really cool writing exercises, and Lauren will show you how it works. We have some really neat technology built into that. The learning's adaptive. So actually, as you're going along and you're being tested and assessed throughout the process, if you get a word or phrase incorrect, you're going to see that word or phrase more frequently in the next kind of iterations of how the process works. So, and we have a learned vocabulary refresh part of the system too, which actually keeps track of all of that content that you've learned, and it keeps track, programmatically. So you don't have to remember to come back in and refresh on stuff every time you come back into the system. The system keeps track of content you haven't seen for a while or that you struggled with, and it's going to bring it up and let you quickly refresh so you can move into learning. Then if you have that built in, then you're constantly learning, refreshing, and retaining, and then building on top of it whenever you come back into the system. We have, as I mentioned, assessments. We also have reports. So as you're moving through and you're taking the test, you're going to get a certificate of completion. Kind of give a little pat on the back as you move through. You also have a transcript inside if you're learning multiple languages, or even just one. It's going to show you where you are progressing through it, and that's exportable. So if you're learning some language skills to maybe improve your position at work, you can actually export it and all the data and bring it to your employer to show them that you went through the program. American Sign Language. So I mentioned this. We've been working on this for a while. We just launched it, as I mentioned. It's all video based. It's a structured course, that guides learners through a process. So you actually have learning goals and objectives built in. There's a lot of sort of EASL resources out there, but this is a learning program. It's very similar. The process is very similar to how all of our other languages are taught, as you'll see in the demonstration. It's based on a curriculum that was designed. It's been used in universities for nearly 30 years. So releasing it in 2 parts. The first collection is now available. That has 8 units of study, 968 videos focusing on alphabet, vocabulary, sentences, finger spelling, that kind of thing. The second collection should be out later this year or early next, and that'll have roughly the same size, 8 units, close to 1,000 videos, and just extending out to more in-depth learning. And then one other feature I think is really important, that the course throughout your learning will introduce deaf culture within the flow of the learning. So you can kind of see it up here. There's going to be that little tooltip that actually will give you a little guidance on how to hold your hands. It's the ASL language that we've come to learn is very nuanced in how you hold your hands and present the signs, but it will also have there some different deaf culture tips and some history presented. And then lastly, before we get to the demo, I just want to talk about our marketing and support. So we like to think about the library business, and our success in it is if we're successful, if your library is successful with our product, we'll be successful with you. Your success is our success. So we invest pretty heavily into making sure that happens. You're going to buy our product and put it out there for your patrons. We have a lot of support, a lot of things that you can use to get the word out into the community and bring people to the product. We have posters, logos, bookmarks, shelf liners, all that traditional stuff. We also do a lot of blog posting that you can tap into and kind of redirect out into your community. And then we have training product webinars. So if you guys subscribe, we'll have a staff training for your people. 1 or 2, how many you need. It would be a big group if we did it. And then if needed, we can also do patron. Some libraries will try to reach out and have us do a training for patrons that use the service. And then midterm of the subscription, we'll reach out and talk to you and see how things are going. if there's some things that you want to try to accomplish that you haven't gotten there yet, we'll help you do that with some of our resources. So you're not in it alone. We want a long-term relationship with you folks, and we'll work to do that. Okay. And I should have mentioned, if you have any questions, if you want to ask them, that's fine. Or if you want to wait till the end, we have a little Q&A spot at the end. So if you want to hold on to them, we'll address them at the end, however you want to do it. So any immediate questions right now? All right, Lauren, I'll turn it over to you for the demo.
All right, thanks, Jim. So let me just actually make sure I shared my computer sound here too, because I probably forgot to do that. Get that back up there. Okay. So here, this is what patrons see after they first create a user account in the program. One of the important things to note about patrons creating user accounts is that they're not required to put in personal information into the program. So they can actually create that user account with just a username and password. They're not required to put in their name or their email address, though they can if they want to. And patrons would create their individual user accounts after they authenticate. We can support multiple different forms of authentication, including IP filtering, referring URL, and barcode, prefix, and length authentication. So we can support that for you. So here is what they see when they first sign into the program. They select a language to learn, and you'll notice a couple of things about the language selection menu here. Some of these languages have multiple dialects available. If a language has multiple dialects available, it will be noted underneath the language name with a little flag. So you'll see here for Arabic, we have Modern Standard, Egyptian, Iraqi, Levantine, multiple dialects available of that language. Jim also mentioned the Kids Speak program, which is that children's language learning program for young learners in grades K through 2. That's available in 6 different languages. And if a language has Kids Speak available, it will be noted with a little flag underneath the language name. So learners are able to see all of the available languages here, and they can select any language to learn. I'm going to select French here just because I have a little bit of learning history in French, and it's going to allow me to show you some of what it looks like to a returning user and also to a new user. So when learners create their account and they select a language, they're brought to the language learning dashboard here. And this dashboard is going to look the same regardless of which language they're in. There's 4 different panels that will be similar across the different languages. The first panel is the learning path. The learning path is essentially a customizable area where learners can set a custom learning path. So they can learn some of the content that comes pre-populated on the learning path. We kind of put that content already there just to give them a place to start. But if they want to, they can add additional content or find additional content from our browse catalog up here. The learning path allows learners to really customize it, like Jim said, so you can drag and drop content and move it around on the learning path. So putting lessons higher or lower depend on the learning path, depending on when you want to learn them. If you added a lesson to your learning path or it came pre-populated, you do have the option to remove content from your learning path. So you can remove single lessons. You can also view the words and phrases that are covered in a particular lesson. And this can be really helpful for learners who maybe have studied a language at some point along the way. So maybe that was high school or college. They're picking it back up and want to see if a lesson would be, would be enough for them, or if they need to move up to a different lesson. Learners also have the ability to remove all lessons from their learning path. So if for some reason they customize the path and then at some reason decide they don't want that, they can totally clear it out and clear everything off of their learning path. You'll also see here that some lessons on my path have a little bit of shading behind them. That indicates I have learning progress in a lesson. So one of the great things about Transparent Language Online is that we don't require learners to go in order, finishing each lesson in consecutive order in order to move on to the next one. We allow learners to skip around, find lessons that interest them. They also have the ability to start a lesson, and they can stop in the middle of a lesson and go on to another lesson at any given time. So they have all of that flexibility available to them. Next to the learning path is the goals panel. And this panel on the learning path is a great place for learners to set a custom learning goal for themselves. So my custom learning goal is set to 5 minutes, and learners can choose from any of our preset options here. They can also set a custom number of minutes. It's totally up to them. The great thing about the learning goals area is that it allows them to basically hold themselves accountable for coming back to the program every day to continue learning the language. And from a library's perspective, you're getting continuous usage of the program from patrons that are setting goals and coming back to meet those goals every day. With each day that I meet my learning goal, we'll see this little bar fill in just a little bit, and then it'll add a day onto my learning streak. So just essentially a streak of how many days I've met my goal. Next up on the learning dashboard, we have the learned vocab chart. This keeps track of all of the words and phrases that learners have accumulated along the way in the language that they're studying. The learned vocab chart will break the words and phrases down into 2 different categories: fresh items and stale items. Fresh items are items that I've recently learned or items that I've recently reviewed. Stale items are items that maybe it's been some time since I've last seen them. Maybe I struggled to learn a particular word or phrase, and the program recognizes all of that, uses an algorithm, and marks words and phrases from fresh to stale at given intervals of time. So then I can come in here and I can refresh my stale words and phrases to bring them from the stale state to fresh again. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a little bit, how to do that refresh session, but it's real quick and easy. And the last panel on the learning dashboard is the practice area. And this is where learners can actually select an individual language skill to practice. So if you have patrons coming into the library saying they just want to focus on their pronunciation of words and phrases in a language, they're not interested in practicing the other skills, they can select from any of the available content in a particular language, and they can check off the words and phrases that they want to practice their pronunciation of and hit practice selected. And that will open up the pronunciation practice activity for just the content contained in these lessons here. So it's real easy for learners to get, pretty granular and pretty specific in terms of what they want to learn if they want to do that. It's important to note here that what's on the practice panel, the different activities to teach each of the different skills, this differs a little bit from what you find in the lessons on the learning path, in that the lessons on the learning path have activities that teach all 4 language skills, whereas over here in the practice area, you're just focusing on one at a time. A couple of other navigational things that we'll talk about here before we look at a lesson. The browse catalog. So this is where you can go to see all of the available content for a specific language. Languages have content that varies by language, but some of the content you can expect to find includes general everyday words and phrases, travel-related vocabulary words and phrases, business and workforce related content. There's also K through 12 specific content. There's grammar lessons in here. There's alphabet courses. I particularly love the alphabet courses for non-Latin based languages like Arabic and Russian, for instance. So learners can actually start with the alphabet in the language before they move into vocabulary words and phrases. So in the browse area here, there's descriptions of all of the different categories of lessons. These categories each have a tag associated with them. So that tag gives information on the level of content, the topics that are covered, the grade level that's covered. So a lot of great information in here. And I'm just scrolling down through our French content here. You can see there's a lot of content available for learners. If learners find a category of content that they're interested in, they can actually drill into the content here the category to read more information if they want to. Some of that information might be things like number of units covered, number of years or even hours of study. This particular course here is 1 to 1.5 years of study, for teens. And some of our courses will also have supplemental PDF workbooks or guides. So these guides might be things like instructor handbooks or scope and sequence documents if you maybe have classes being taught in the library. They might be student workbooks or handouts, answer keys as well. So it's a lot of great information in there. So that's what you can find in the categories area. Let me actually take a look and let me go back in here. And I'll show you when you actually drill in here and you find content that you're interested in. If you want to add it right to your learning path, you can click the plus button, so that will add it to the learning path that we saw out here on the learning dashboard. So it's a really great area to come find content, see what interests you, and customize your learning path further. The My Transcript report, so Jim mentioned some of the reports that are available in the program and personal progress reports that you can run. So the transcript report allows learners to print a transcript of their learning history. I can do this for any of the preset times that are here. I can also select a date range right on the calendar as well if I need to get a little bit more specific. And when I click generate report, which we're not going to do today, but if we did this, it would generate a progress report for me that shows the lessons I've completed, what I've scored on assessments, which lessons I still have in progress, how much learning time I've spent in the program during this time period, how many words and phrases I've learned. So it gives me a lot of great information about the resource. We also have some supplemental resources that are available as well. So these supplemental resources just kind of go along with the language that the learner is studying. But these resources, again, these resources do vary by language, just depending on what language you're looking at, but they may include things like our word of the day, our blogs, our social communities, so just different supplemental resources that we have available. The word of the day is really cool. This is a great one for learners to come in here and learn one new word every day. So you can see here that I can play this word of the day in the native speaker sound.
Blanc.
And I can also view it and listen to the word or phrase in a sample sentence.
Elle aime les parfums à base de fleurs blanches.
So really great way for me just to come in here and learn a little bit of French every day as well. A couple other navigational things here to mention, mobile apps. So mobile access is included, and learners have the links right in here to the different mobile apps, as well as their unique QR code to activate the apps. They can also activate the apps with their username and password. And then help documentation is available, and it is contextual based on the screen that learners are looking at. So we provide that help documentation and easy ways to contact our support team and provide us with feedback. So that's a bit about how learners navigate around the program. What I want to do is I want to jump in quickly and show you a lesson, show you some different activities in a lesson. So let's take a look at this lesson here. Depending on whether or not I've interacted with this lesson before, it will either bring me to the last activity that I was learning in the lesson, or it will bring me to the first activity in the lesson if I'm new to this lesson. At any point, I can click this menu icon up here and open up a menu of all of the available activities that are covered in this particular lesson. You can see here each of the activities has a little icon next to it indicating what skill they're going to practice. And you can see here, because I'm a returning user to this lesson, it saves my progress of which activities within the lesson I've completed. And you can see I've also skipped around a little bit too, so I do have that flexibility. But let's take a look at one of the first activities in this particular lesson to kind of show you what a beginner level activity will look like. All of our activities have help overlays to give learners information on what to do within the activity. But learners have the flexibility to disable the help overlays if they become comfortable enough with it and don't want to see them anymore. So in this particular activity, I'm just going to read and listen to the French words and phrases, and then I'm going to also read the English meaning as well.
Perdu. Je suis perdu.
Un hôtel. Un téléphone.
So I could continue going down the list here, listening to all these words and phrases. I can replay them as I need to as well. And when I'm ready, I click the Done button here, or I can open up the menu icon and select another activity to use. I'm going to select our Preview It activity to go to next. This particular activity is going to basically be similar to the language comparison activity where I'm seeing a word or phrase, I'm seeing the English meaning, but I'm focusing on one word or phrase at a time.
Perdu. Je suis perdu.
Un hôtel. Un téléphone.
And you'll see here if there's grammatical information associated with it or word or phrase, that will be on the screen here. Also kind of what Jim had mentioned about the American Sign Language course, the deaf culture notes will also be here on the screen as well with these little indicators. So the next activity I want to show you is one of our pronunciation practice activities. So this is a great one for learners to focus or work on their pronunciation of words and phrases. First, I go through a microphone setup here to make sure my microphone is working, and that helps to reduce frustration as well. Testing 1, 2, 3. So if there were any issues, it would tell me there were issues with my microphone, but we're all good, so we're going to proceed. And here I'm going to read the French word or phrase. I'm going to listen to how it's spoken by the native speaker and then record my pronunciation.
Perdu.
Perdu. So I record my pronunciation. The program's telling me that I could improve a little bit at the beginning here, and I certainly don't disagree. I have a little bit of trouble nailing that first part of the pronunciation there. But here you also get a rating of about how well you're doing in your pronunciation of this word or phrase. And I could continue to retry and repronounce this word or phrase, or I can move on to the next one in the list.
Je suis perdu.
Je suis perdu. So I did better that time. I'm doing pretty well here. You can see my rating. Again, I could retry and repronounce this word or phrase if I need to. I could re-listen to the native speaker pronunciation. But here, this is a great way for me to kind of see my pronunciation and compare it to the native speaker. One of the last activities that I want to show you is one of our writing and typing activities. So here I'm listening to the French word or phrase, and then I'm asked to input what I heard. I have a couple of different options for inputting what I heard. The first option is I could use the native keyboard here. These are built into the program, so learners don't have to install anything on their computers or their devices, and similar for the library as well. You don't have to install anything on your computers or devices. So I could use the native keyboard here, but for some beginner level learners, this might be a little bit too overwhelming for them. So we do also have an option called easy typing.
L'adresse.
And you can see it was quite literally easy enough to turn that on with the click of a button. And then I'm just selecting from a smaller set of letters or characters to fill in each of the blank spaces here. So you can see I made a mistake. It showed me where I made a mistake and what I should have input, and we can retry.
L'adresse.
So it's giving me that feedback along the way as we're going through.
L'adresse.
Perdu.
And then when I get it right, it moves me on to the next word or phrase. I can very easily come back to the full keyboard if I want to.
Perdu.
And you can see it's quite as easy as just clicking a button. And here I can either type with the keyboard that's connected to my device. So if I have a laptop with an external keyboard or the keyboard built into my laptop, I could use that. I could also tap with my finger if I'm on a mobile device, or I can point and click with my mouse. Here, if I selected a letter that has accents associated with it, it will show me those available accent marks, so I'm not required to input those if I don't want to. And when I think I'm done, I hit enter to check my work.
Perdu. Trouvé.
So that's a bit about some of the different activities in the program. There are, I believe, over 30 different activities in the different lessons. So there'll be different combinations of activities as learners go through the learning content. It won't be the exact same activities in a row over and over again. We will switch that up. So you may notice that sometimes a lesson will have 8 activities, sometimes it has 9 or 10, other times it may have 7. So it really just depends on the learning content that's being taught. So we're going to head back out to the learning dashboard here, and you can see that time we spent in the activities, we met our learning goal for the day, so it fills in that goal and also gives me a day added to my streak. I did promise that I would show you our refresh element here. So learners have the option to select from a couple of preset options for refreshing that stale vocabulary or what might be stale vocabulary. I'm going to select all, even though we won't actually go through all of the content that's stale. We'll just go through a small few. But here, what we're going to be doing is we're going to see 3 words and phrases, and we're going to be asked to think or say the meaning to ourselves in the language that we're studying. And if we say that we knew the word or phrase, at the end of the 3, it will bring us back to the first one and confirm for a second time if we knew the word or phrase. And then if we say yes on the second time as well, it'll mark those words and phrases from stale to fresh. So let's have a look.
Madame Dupont.
Le smoking.
Je n'écris pas bien le français.
So we said yes to all of those words and phrases, and now we're back to the first one.
Madame Dupont.
Le smoking.
Je n'écris pas bien le français.
So you can see that's how easy it is to do that refresh. I can refresh as many or as few words and phrases at a time as I would like to get those stale words and phrases from stale back to fresh again. So that refresh is really easy to do, and it gives learners something to keep coming back to do within the program. I do want to save time. Well, I'll quickly show you what our Kids Speak program looks like, though we're not going to actually go into it. I'll just give you a really quick introduction to it by quite literally playing the introduction. So sit back.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Claudine. Voici ma chauve-souris. On va apprendre le français. On va s'amuser.
So we won't go into Kids Speak here today, but that's a little bit about what it looks like. It's animated, it's immersive, it's a lot of fun for young learners, teaching things like the alphabet, numbers, songs, animals, a lot of great content there for young learners. And there's also a companion workbook that goes along with it. So heading back to the learning path here, we're going to switch languages, and it's real easy to do that by clicking the language name and selecting more languages here. And this is where we can see other languages that are available or choose a new language, and learners have the flexibility to change languages at any time as well. I'm going to actually go in to show you a little bit about our sign language course that's now available. So this particular course, Jim already talked to you about it, gave you a little bit of background on it, but let's dive into a lesson here. Which one do we want to dive into today? We'll dive into this lesson here. So you'll notice here that there are help overlays still in this particular slide, or this particular introduction here. We also have deaf culture information integrated into the lesson as well. If I open up the menu icon here, you can see that you can see that there are activities that teach the different skills here. So these activities are teaching different sign language skills. We'll go into the first activity here, introducing the sign. So I'm reading the word or phrase, and then I'm watching how the word or phrase is signed. and I can replay. It'll replay automatically, but I can also pause if I need to. And there's tips about how, as Jim mentioned, there's tips about how to actually perform the signs as well. There's also sign recognition activities here. So this particular activity is going to be showing me a word or phrase, and then I'm going to be selecting the correct meaning from the list. So here I'm gonna guess here, and I was right with that guess. So here, I mean, again, similar activities to what you may see in some of the other language courses, but geared towards learning American Sign Language. There's also sign identification as well. This is integrating writing into the process, so seeing the word or phrase and being asked to type what we believe the word or phrase is. I think this is what we just learned here. Perfect. So there's different activities, again, to teach each of the different skills. So that's a little bit of a sample of the course. Jim, did you want to mention anything else about the American Sign Language course that's available?
No, I think it's kind of jerky when you see it on a on a webinar like this.
Oh, okay.
But it's totally video throughout, and when you're using it on your own computer or device, it's pretty smooth. So.
Awesome. And one other thing I'll mention for you is, in addition to the American Sign Language content, I just want to mention the vast English content that we have. So as Jim mentioned, we have English for speakers of, I believe it's 35 different languages now with English for Ukrainian. So we have content paired at the beginner level for speakers of 35 different languages. And then at the intermediate and advanced level, the content is immersive. So learners can come in, they can learn any of the lessons that are available by going to the Browse tab here. There's content that teaches each of the different, there's content at each of the different levels, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. We also have an American Citizenship Test Prep course that's available as well. That's included for English learners, and that's an intermediate and advanced level course. My favorite course that we have, though, for English learners, some of our immersive conversations content, and especially at the advanced level, it's teaching more workforce vocabulary, words, and phrases. So things like around finance, medical, and sales and marketing topics. Within the finance content here, you don't have to be working in the finance industry to learn these words and phrases. They can still be applicable to daily life. In particular, the auto insurance content or lesson here, this particular one actually uses a sample auto insurance quote to instruct the content. So we're using made up but looks pretty real content here to instruct the learning of different vocabulary, words, and phrases. So you'd read your sample auto insurance quote, and then you'd answer some multiple choice questions about it. So there's a lot of content available for English learners and other learners as well, but I think I'll actually turn it back over to Jim at this time.
Okay.
Unless someone has questions about something that we just saw. Okay.
Right. Okay, just I'm holding questions at the end. They're piling up. All right. We're ready. I just have one more slide. I thought I would just recap just sort of some of the key important elements that we showed you in the demonstration, the presentation. So first, the large number of languages that we have, 120, and we grow those, over the years. We don't charge you extra for any new languages we're putting in. We've got a robust ESL, ELL component as well, 34 different languages there, and we add them based on world events, like the Ukrainian, English for Ukrainian. That's a problem for some libraries where they have, refugees moving in that they don't have enough resources for. So we can build those pretty quickly. Again, we don't charge for them. We have 24 indigenous languages, which are really the indigenous languages that we focus on are part of a program called 7,000 languages, which are, these are all endangered. In some cases, maybe only 5 or 6 people in the world still speak them, and they're getting pretty old, these people that do. So there's a risk that, when the last of them is gone, that the language would go with them. So this organization, we partner with them, we provide the technology, and they create the courses for us, working with Indigenous peoples. Our American Sign Language course, again, which is the #1 language that requests that we've gotten from librarians over the last few years. We're happy to be able to deliver on that. Teaching all 4 core language skills, including writing, is, I think, really essential for a complete language learning program. And then the lifelong sustainment, that learned vocabulary, because you can put a lot of time and effort into learning language. I think most of us have probably learned language over the course of our lives and probably don't remember even a fraction of it because we don't use it and we don't have a way to refresh it and remember it. So that programmatic element of our process, I think, is really important, because if a learner is learning and they can remember and they see that they're building and building, then they'll keep coming back. It'll be something that they see the value in. So hopefully you do. All right, that's it. Time for Q&A if you guys have it.
So Jeffrey, I saw a couple of your questions and I'll answer them here. The recordings in here are all native speaker audio recordings, and they're also reviewed by native speakers as well. So when we create content, we have a pretty rigorous content creation process where we have different native speakers either creating the content or helping us with the translations for the content in the courses. We also have different native speakers that are reviewing those and native speakers that are doing the recordings as well. So they are all native speaker pronunciations. It may have just been maybe how the recording came along in the webinar, in this webinar process or something like that. But I encourage you to try it and see for yourself for sure. And then we really don't have a whole lot of slang in the program. That's not something that we are actively teaching, though like in our blogs and maybe even in Word of the Day, there may be slang that's taught. And if anyone has questions, you're welcome to just unmute yourself. Everyone's probably muted, but you can unmute yourself up in the upper right corner of the screen and ask your question verbally.
All right. Well, if something pops up, after the fact, you can email Jackie and she'll get back to us. Also wanted to, we've put together a proposal for pricing for the group, which Jackie has. But if you want an individual trial, if you want to get in and try it yourself, if you haven't already done that, we can create a dedicated trial for your group and send that over to Jackie, and you can send it out if you want to everybody, and then they can create an account and just begin it. So just let me know if you want to do that, Jackie. We can create one pretty quickly for you. All right. I guess if there's nothing else, I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time to join us. Hope you found it worthwhile, and we'll be talking to you all soon. Thanks again. Thank you, Lauren. Well done.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, see ya.
All right.